Can the government police misinformation without trampling on free speech?
Welcome to another incredible episode of You Can't Make This Shit Up. Kellen Clark, David Washington, Joel Hoxley. This is a Jay and Washington Network production. We're going to jump right in. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court ruled on the Biden administration's request to remove COVID-19 misinformation from social media. The justices upheld the government's actions, dismissing claims of coercion due to lack of evidence of harm. Dissenters argued for free speech rights despite the potential misinformation risk. What do you say, David?
It was a request by the Biden administration to certain social media platforms, if I recall correctly, to just kind of clean up their platforms in regard to certain information that was harmful to the public. It wasn't any kind of coercion or, arm pulling or anything like that. It was just the government saying, hey, these are the facts as we know it. And what is being put out there is causing harm to people. And so I understand the concerns that people had about the freedom of speech issues and the government's implied interference in our freedom of speech. However, with social media platforms, these are platforms that are privately owned, and it is not government interference when privately owned companies say, hey, we're not going to have this type of conversation on our platforms.
Yeah, and I think what the Supreme Court was mainly going for on this one was that there's a difference between, withholding something or trying to force or compel a private entity to act and asking relatively politely, because they didn't have a do this or else. They just said a do this, please. Yeah. And in general, they tended to be okay with the government. I mean, they want the good relations, even if the government wasn't actually going to do anything. It's not like the government really has any right to bribe them.
True, exactly.
But yeah, I think this is very in line with a lot of the opinions that will come out of the Robert Court. They tend to be very narrow in what they determine an infraction of something. Mm-hmm. They don't like to have very broad rules, very broad laws that apply in a lot of different cases. They like to narrow it down a lot. And I think they've kind of narrowed it down what's government interference and what's not. I think it's a very typical Roberts Court opinion in that way, I think. Joel?
Listen, government needs to leave businesses alone. Businesses need to be able to operate on their own. This is David knows, and I'm sure you do know me well enough to say, look, it's okay. You can ask a company to do something. It's not a problem. Government, go for it. But to demand, to force them to do something, that's where the government oversteps their bounds. So absolutely. Not surprised with this decision. Again, I am a big supporter of the Roberts Court. People, can say what they want to about this court. I think that Roberts puts a lot of work into making sure the justices work out any details before they get out there. Sure, he's had leaked documents and stuff that have never happened in the past, but
Dobbs decision.
Well, I think listen, again, it's what we do with these decisions as political leaders. That was a good decision. puts it back into the states. It's not in the Constitution, so it's a an Amendment 10 issue. So it's always been that way for 49, 50 years, and it's just because it's been at the Supreme Court. People have gotten fallen in love with it, felt it was a safety, but still not in the Constitution. But that's a good decision. It's when politicians decide to come out and say, well, now we need a federal law. Okay, Lindsey Graham, go back to freaking high school or whatever you go to, because, you just pissed me off. As a conservative, you just effed everything up, because we've been working to get this to be a state issue. Listen, I am not somebody who hides behind the fact. If you say it's because it's state issue. Don't freaking decide you're going to change the ball game, right? Because you have a win in the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
they're
greedy.
They should be doing balls and strikes, and that's it. And that's what they do, as far as I'm concerned.
This is a cautionary tale for producers of social media and consumers of social media, especially when you don't own the platform. People have to remember, and I see some of these, reactions on YouTube, on TikTok, on, Instagram, whatever, about, this particular platform is censoring me because I got demonetized, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Say, hey, until you own your own individual platform, you're at the behest of the platform that you are creating your content on. So own your own content and go beyond that. Own your own platform to distribute and own the distribution methods of your content.
It's like, I've been throttled. Well, maybe you did something that deserved to be throttled. So own your own. I'm with you, David. I'm just making sure I protect you on the fact that I agree 100%.
Right.
You want to talk about being throttled, you better know what the rules were that the company was running.
Right. Yeah, if you breach terms of service, then you've earned it. And we're doing pass the mic around today. We only have two, but anyways, you see a lot of people talking about free speech. That these companies are censoring your free speech, but you're not guaranteed. You don't have a constitutional right to Twitter, right? You have a constitutional right to free speech somewhere, right? So forum isn't, because nothing is unlimited, and your forum can be limited, but there's always a forum available to you. You can say what you want on the streets. You could, like David said, make your own platform, go to a different platform. You could go on WhatsApp if you were really determined to get your message out there. There are other forms you can use. Like, I get it. Like, maybe you want that more mainstream form because it helps you get your word out farther, but you're not entitled to it.
Listen, the Morning Constitution is a great opportunity for you to have the conversation about free speech. Free speech controls what the government can regulate. It tells you what the government can do. If you're working for the government, your speech is limited, but your freedom of speech is still there. You go to a private company, and that private company says, you cannot say anything about abortion. You can't say anything about guns. You can't say anything about these issues. Well, the Constitution says, the Constitution doesn't run the company. The company can run any way it wants to. Now, does it breach if it has a contract with the government and tells you, starts regulating? Then you start changing things. But until you have to know what your rules are. Mm-hmm. The Constitution is a government control, not a business control. So I just want to kind of plug the fact that the Morning Constitution gets into details like this, gun rights and all the things that are in your Constitution, amendments, but know your Constitution, and please tune in to the Morning Constitution.
Nice plug. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, these things are privately owned, and none of your First Amendment rights are unlimited. The fire in a crowded theater thing, whether you think that's right or not, I personally think it is. Or if you want to protest, right? There are different forums. Like, you have public forums.
Did you just say you're going to put a fire in a public forum?
No, I'm saying it's right to limit that. Not that it's right to say it. I do not endorse yelling fire in a crowded theater. You heard it here first, folks. Don't do that. but like where you can protest, like a lot of protesters, I think, get very angry that they can't protest exactly where they want. Well, you have different forms. You got your, your traditional public forums where, you pretty much go ham. You got like your limited public forums where you have to ask permission to go ham. And then you got non-public forums where you are not permitted to go ham, period. So you got every right is to a degree limited, and in speech is the same way. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater, and you're not entitled to every form that you would like. It's irritating, but that's just the way it is. You can call it bad business on the company's part. You can call it good business on the company's part, but it's not a constitutional issue.
Okay, the government can give you direction. The Supreme Court has now said that they can give you direction, but you don't have to adhere to it.
Just say no.
I mean,
Just say no.
Oh my goodness, there he goes. He's now a Nancy Reagan.
Whoa, 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 whoa,
You just exposed yourself, you Nancy Reagan, or you Nancy Reaganite, you.
just to bring it home for us here at J&W,
Yes,
this
I
is
know
a plug
it
for
does.
J&W. What we learned is that in regards to the management of political campaigns, we learned that if we own the resources and tools to have better strategies, that's the innovation that our clients need to be aware of, and the public needs to be aware of, that there is a better mousetrap. And so that's why we've invested in having the ability for our clients to own their own data, their either consumer and or voter marketing data, and also a canvassing app for individual campaigns to use to canvass efficiently and more intention than other canvassing apps that are available through the parties, and whether this is for a business or for political campaign, it's a useful tool that takes the ownership out of the hands of a third party and put it closer and closer into the hands of the individual business and or campaign. And so we get it. We understand, having ownership of the resources and tools to make your business and your campaign better is always the approach that a person will want to take when making decisions to, market to a particular clientele or target particular voters.
Well, David, talking about that, I want to kind of go one step further. I'm going to get Kellen involved in this conversation, but
Thank you.
like we have the Leadership Academy
There you go.
that is coming up, and this is again why are we going to create a Leadership Academy? All these different organizations do these Leadership Academies because we want a Leadership Academy that addresses your needs. We want a Leadership Academy that says, hey, if you're running for office, this is actually what's going to happen. These are the things that are going to happen, and these are the ways you're going to have to pivot. And what happens if this happens? And what if you get a media conversation? All those things that these other places don't answer, but just make that networking for you. Great. Go into those organizations, get your networking. But you want to learn how to run a campaign? You want to learn how to run and manage a campaign? You want to be involved in any part of a campaign? Maybe you just want to know, what kind of candidate should I be donating to? Leadership Academy. It's going to be starting in 2025. The best thing, Project 2025 is off the table, but Leadership Academy 2025, get involved. But I want to talk to Kellen because Kellen needs to introduce you to the United Voice.
Yeah, so United Voice will kind of work tangentially with that, but United Voice will be more on the voter side. The Leadership Academy will be more on the elected side. But what I'm making happen with United Voice is that we want to bring the politicians to the voters. We want to bring people from all different persuasions to the voters, different views to the voters, the major issues to the voters, especially the young voters. Because right now, a lot of politicians just aren't involved with the universities because there's no voting power there right now. There's no voting power because there's been almost no attention paid, not been enough paid. The young people can be the most politically engaged people. They can be some of the smartest people. They can be some of the most dedicated people, but there's so much of the world that hasn't yet been presented that we can take that so much further and get a more engaged and tighter knit community, political community, leadership community, without having to segment people based on party orientation or anything like that.
And you're seeing a lot of stuff out there, aren't you?
Yeah.
When you talk about maybe get into Turning Point,
Yeah,
that's a lot of young people.
Sure.
And,
It is.
and this is nonpartisan. This
Yep.
is just making people aware and getting them engaged at a local level. Local politics is the most important politics,
is.
and if you're not aware of what's going on, then you're not going to. It's hard to say. If you don't know what's going on, then you're disconnected. If you're disconnected, you're not giving back the input that we need from you.
Yeah, exactly. And there are so many ways to that even students, because keep in mind just how many people in our area specifically, how many people in this area are students. They could be the majority if they wanted to. That's how many people there are, especially because the turnout is so low. There are so many issues. Whether it's housing related, whether it's roads, whether it's transportation, things that I think a lot of young people do care about, because young people are historically not the richest people.
Mhm.
And there's a lot that they could do to make their own communities better. I think we just need to get people realizing their own power more, and also getting connected with the local politicals, to, again, like Joel said, give them the feedback. So that way they know how to better represent those members of their communities.
Right. Young people and other demographics are leaving so much on the table, and it's unfortunate. However, we've just demonstrated to you how that can change. And on that note, Joel.
Well, it's another episode of You Can't Make This Shit Up. Please like, please share, please get involved. We have so many things going on. 2025 will be the best, but we're going to finish up 2024 with your help, just bring your facts, not your feelings. We're here with you. We got the newsletter and everything else. So please get involved. Need that UV